Hi friends, welcome back. My name is Melissa. If you're just joining me, welcome. For today's video, I'm going to bring you a collection video. We are going to do my Scindapsus collection. I'm really excited. I wanted to do philodendron next, but I have about 30 philodendron in my collection. Yes, it's a lot. And I did spend part of this weekend literally checking my plants again because some spider mites have found their way into my plant room. Sneaky little things, and they only attack my phyllos. I'm going to show you the plants out here instead of in my plant room today because I just cleaned in there and I want to avoid going back in there for a little bit. It's nice and clean and I don't want to touch it. So I'm gonna bring all the plants out here and show you them a little bit more closely. Before I get started and show you my collection, I do want to make this into a series video, I believe. So I'm gonna show you each plant in my collection for part one, which is this video here. And for part two, I'm going to be propagating a lot of my Scindapsus plants. I don't necessarily like the long leggy look per se. I like bushy plants and filling them out. That is something I just love with plants. So I am going to be propagating a lot of them for part two. I want to take you along that process and show you how I prop. I'm actually going to be doing some in water, some in moss, and probably some in Fluval Stratum, and just maybe even perlite as well, and just see maybe kind of what props the best. In my experience, Scindapsus are really slow propagators and growers depending on the individual cutting, but they tend to be a little bit slower, especially if it's just an empty node, which I have a feeling a lot of these are going to be empty nodes. And then part three, once they root and grow, it'll be down the road. I will show you how I go to add them all back in and fill out my Scindapsus plants. So I think that'll be a fun little series. I do have beneficial mites on my plant, so if you see any of these packets, they are good mites and they will hopefully eat all the bad spider mites. I don't use pesticides unless I have to, and they will harm the good guys, so I am not using them for spider mites. I am just letting the good guys take care of them. So let's get started here, and I'm going to show you each one of my Scindapsus plants. Up first is going to be this one here. This is a Scindapsus Jade Satin, and this one is very beautiful. I do have a couple of longer vines here in the front, and I may end up cutting this one to propagate to fill it back in. I think I do want to do that for this plant, and it does have a couple empty nodes that I could definitely prop. But I love this one. I'm going to show you these plants kind of up close here too, but this one has a dark green just texture, and it has some sparkles in it, and just the overall just feel of the leaf and look of it I just love. There's just something about the leaf shape on this one that just speaks to me. I love it so much. I actually propagated this plant before to fill it out. It started as a smaller plant in my collection, and it did lose quite a bit of leaves after I moved. I do remember that, and then it started growing on its own, but it has gotten pretty long, so I think I want to do a prop and chop maybe to like here and get them filling back in the top. And this one's currently in a 5-inch, so I'm thinking I might want to go up to a 6-inch soon. It is pretty root bound in here. You can see some roots coming out of the bottom. Care wise, for pretty much all my Scindapsus, I treat them all the same. I think they all relatively have the same care. They tend to grow a bit slower for me. They do tolerate lots of different light levels, which is good if you're looking for more lower light plants or plants that don't necessarily need a ton of light. I think Scindapsus are great, and they also can go a pretty good time without water, I would say. I let most of mine get all the way dry, and they can even sit dry for quite a while, and I wouldn't let them sit dry for too long because it can stress them. Once their leaves tend to curl in like this when they get thirsty, they curl like that, And if too much of the plant starts curling, then it is severely wanting water, and you can stress them and it will all of a sudden cause them to yellow a bunch of leaves at once. So if you notice that on yours, curled leaves, and you water it and then the next day or so it starts to yellow leaves, that's just in response to the stress of being so dehydrated and wanting water. So I do find them pretty tolerant of going a while without water, like if you forget to water or you go a little too long in between. I feel like they're pretty forgiving in that sense. But some of them do grow a little bit faster than others, but overall I feel like they grow pretty slow. So I think they're very versatile. I think they're a great plant to have in your collection that isn't as needy. And for Scindapsus, I don't really find that they get many pest issues, at least in my experience. And they're very beautiful plants. So this one I love, and I cannot wait to get this one growing big and full and fluffy. The next plant in my collection is this one here. This one is called a Scindapsus Platinum. And this one has a cool kind of tone to it. The leaves are like a silvery blue color. It's very, very beautiful. I actually did get this one imported from Indonesia when I did that import haul. And this one is actually only 2 vines here and here. And I did initially take a cutting maybe a month or so after it was still kind of acclimating, and I took it too soon. That cutting ended up dying, and it actually has not produced a new growth from where I took that cutting, which is very unusual. It definitely has fully acclimated to my space, and I want to get this one big, full, and fluffy. It is very sparse. These two are growing a bit leggy. There's a couple nodes in between. I know this is probably going to take a really long time to start growing and propagating and filling this one in, but I want to go ahead and get it started. I think this time of year, we're creeping into spring. I think it's okay to start propagating. That way it can have the full growing season to really like root and take in here and grow as best as it can. So I think this one is very beautiful. I'm excited to have this one. This color is one of my favorite on plant leaves. This one will do the whole leaf curling thing too when it gets really thirsty. I try not to let my plants get to that point where they are really wanting water. Occasionally it does happen, or they won't need water on the day that I'm watering, and then it's not until the following week until I get to them, and they can go a few more days extra. So sometimes they get a little bit more thirsty than I would like, but for the most part they do well and they bounce back just fine. But yeah, I'm excited for this one. The next Scindapsus in my collection is literally one long vine. Do you see this? This one actually is called a Silver Lady. It is very beautiful. This one has a different tone to it, a different marking, like pattern to it. And some of these can look similar, the different varieties, but once you kind of get more familiar with them, you can tell them apart more. Some of them are very close though. So this one actually was a cutting. I really wanted a Silver Lady, and at the time that I got this, it was really expensive. So the cutting took a while to root and grow for me, and I believe the original cutting leaf ended up dying, just yellowing off, and it gave me a couple leaves. It gave me this pretty large leaf here, and I swear it took over a year before it did anything else. And you can see as it continued to grow, I have a lot of empty nodes with an occasional leaf, and the leaves are getting smaller since there's less light as they trail down. So this one I am definitely cutting. I'm going to cut back all the way to this big leaf, and I am going to be cutting up all the nodes individually and rooting them and adding them back in here to get a full bushy pot. I have so many plants climbing already that I would rather have my Scindapsus trail, I think, but I might do one climbing up. We'll see, because they just grow so slow for me that I feel like putting them on a pole, it would just take forever to fill out a pole. It's kind of what I'm thinking, but we'll see. But this is definitely one that I am chopping. This one here is called a Moonlight, a Scindapsus Qbi Moonlight. This one actually was a Costa Farms Scindapsus, and I got this one actually ordered. I got this way before they released them in the stores, so I did pay the full price. It was $50, I remember. I've had the Qbi Moonlight in my collection for a while, and I did propagate this once. I have some little cuttings that are already rooted in here. I had rooted these in water and potted them up. They haven't grown, of course, yet. They're still not doing anything. So I will probably actually, my plan was to let these root a bit in here and then add these back into the mother pot. So I might just add them in here, but I definitely want to prop this one again. It has 2 long vines over here, and it has another one here that's starting to grow. This one isn't really leggy, so I'm gonna leave that one. And it has a couple more that are growing a little bit more, but I definitely want to probably cut these about halfway and do a lot more propagation so I can get this one really full. I definitely have a lot of room that I can fill in up top here. But I love the color on this one. I think it's pretty. I just love the silvery blue tones. And it just has a unique shape. It's beautiful. And yeah, I'm really happy. I really want the dark form, I think, too. I like the Jade Satin and how dark it is. So if I come across a dark form, I will definitely get it. But this one is very beautiful. I do get some crisping on the edges of the leaves a little bit. They tend to crisp up more than some of my other Scindapsus in my collection that I've noticed. And I let this one, it can tolerate drying out just like the others. I wouldn't let this one get too dry. In between waterings, this one can get a little bit more angry at you. So I would definitely water it. I don't keep my Scindapsus overly wet or by any means. They pretty much dry all the way out. They do get a bit lower light in my collection too, so they don't dry as fast. But yeah, this one can be a little bit more sensitive to underwatering. But I really do love it, and I think it's one that I feel like you would want to have in your collection if you like the silvery blue on plants. And I just think it's a beautiful one, so I highly recommend. These next 2 Scindapsus in my collection is probably my favorite just because I love the bigger leaves. If you know anything about me, you know I love big leaves. And these are definitely just bigger than any Scindapsus I have seen. This is my main one here, and she is big, full, and fluffy, and gorgeous. Isn't this beautiful? I love her so much. And she has a couple longer vines. She is beautiful. So this is the Scindapsus Pictus Exotica, and I think the name fits Exotica. I just feel, when I feel like Exotica, I feel like, I don't know, I feel like bigger, more impressive to look at, I guess, which I feel like these leaves are just so much bigger compared to the rest of them. And they're just beautiful. I love the coloring, the pattern, everything. And this one does have some like silver splashy looking leaves. I actually thought this one here was a silver splash, but it's actually another Exotica. And I think it was sold to me as a silver splash, but in actuality, it turned out to be an Exotica because I did buy it really small. But that is okay. So since I technically have 2 Exoticas, I have this one and this one, I might actually combine this one into here and make one big full Exotica pot, because this one I've had for quite a while. It was the first Scindapsus that I purchased. I remember at the old house, I had it hanging. It was pretty small and compact. So in that time, it has grown quite a bit. It's just very, again, one that I find tends to grow a bit slower. And I've had this one in different light levels, and it tends to grow about the same for me. I do have the backside pretty bare. I do want to get this one filling out, and I think if I combined this, it would be beautiful. So that might be a repotting project I'm gonna do one day and combine these ones, because I think that would make for such a beautiful pot, and it would just be absolutely stunning to look at. This one is in a, this isn't an 8-inch, I believe this is in a 7-inch pot, and it's not root bound by any means. I think I upsized this one last year sometime, and this one is in a 5-inch pot here, and this one isn't root bound by any means. I definitely can take some cuttings off of each one if I really wanted to. So I'm either gonna take cuttings off of the longer vines on this one because they are a little bit stretched out, and then I will add this one in here and then prop a couple to add back into eventually. So I think that is my plan with this one. And if you do not have an Exotica, definitely get one. It's really easy, it's beautiful, it's big, and I don't think you will be disappointed in this plant. Last up is my longest one, and she's pretty long. Let me get her other half on the table here. Yeah, she is really long. So this is actually two combined into one. I potted them in here together. I do have all the vines swooped towards the front. The back is empty because of the way it sits on the shelf. And I actually do want to get this one out of this. I honestly don't know why I used a plastic pot. It dries way too fast and with all these air holes. So I do want to repot this one and get it potted into a normal 6-inch nursery pot. I think because it was on the shelf and I didn't have a pot for it, I didn't want a green one for some reason, I think was what my brain was thinking. But I need to find some more cache pots that are pretty to hold these. But yeah, it just dries really fast. So this one is actually a Silvery Ann. The Silvery Ann has a more silvery tip to it, to the leaves, and it's the Argyraeus, or however you pronounce that one. And I will show you the difference up close and what the two different leaves look like. But this one is pretty hardy. I feel like it can get a little angry if you let it get too dry. The leaves on this one will severely start curling if it's like really wanting water. I have looked up a couple of times and noticed this one curling a little bit because it dries so fast. And this one is on my top shelf in my room. So in order for me to get this plant up and down, I have to use a step stool. So it's not one that I tend to, if it doesn't look thirsty, then I tend not to water it. But this one is very easy in my opinion. It's very hardy. I feel like the leaves are beautiful. It kind of has some speckled variegation. It's not as prominent. The Silvery Ann isn't as prominent unless I feel like it would get a ton of light. But the Argyraeus one, it's kind of like mottled throughout. It has a distinct pattern, I feel like. And yeah, I feel like they're both the same. I potted them together to save space, and I'm glad I did because my Silvery Ann pot wasn't huge. So I felt like I could pot them together and it would be fine. And yeah, I'm glad that I did that. So yes, a very full basket. This one, I don't believe I'm going to propagate. I have a couple strands that kind of have a couple maybe empty nodes, maybe not. Yeah, no, I'm not gonna propagate this one because I like how long this one is. So I do have one strand propagating in water that I took that I'll add back in here and repot this into a different pot, I believe. But we'll see. I'm not really sure what my plan is with this one. I definitely love Scindapsus. I love them because they're easy care. They tolerate many different light levels. They can tolerate drying out somewhat. And they don't really, it's hard to root rot these unless you're letting them sit in wet soil all the time. I feel like if you let these guys dry out and then water, they do just fine with that consistency. I have not had any pest on my Scindapsus at all. Even when I had thrips over the summer, they left my Scindapsus alone. Spider mites leave them alone. I don't get mealies. I don't get anything with my Scindapsus. So that is another reason why I love them. They are not pest magnets in my experience. And there is so many varieties and so many beautiful ones, and I love the heart-shaped leaves too. Some of them have beautiful heart-shaped leaves, which I adore. So I definitely want more. I do want a dark form, and if I can come across another like silvery one, and I would love to have a variegated one as well someday, so we will see. But I love them and I totally recommend them if you want to get more in your collection. I feel like out of all the ones that I have, they're all the same care wise, but definitely get your hands on an Exotica. I highly recommend. I just love the bigger leaves on that one, and it's my favorite for sure. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed my collection. I will definitely make a playlist on Scindapsus, so any of the future videos I make, like for parts 2 and 3, I will add them in there so you can easily find them. And I can't wait to get another one. Now I'm gonna be itching to get another one soon. But thank you guys for watching, and I will talk to you guys again soon. I have some crazy cats right now. I swear, whenever I bust out the camera, they're gonna go nuts. Do you see one back there on the couch? She's about to attack. Kitty cats, Stop scooting around the house. You cats are so crazy.